Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our event, which is going to be looking at managing cybersecurity in 2023 and beyond. My name is Ashley Renison, and I am Membership Manager at the Institute of Managers and Leaders, Australia and New Zealand. I would just like to begin today's event by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we're all meeting today, and also paying my respect to elders both past and present. Cybersecurity has always been a really important topic, but I think with the increase in cyber attacks, particularly some very public ones, I think that we're all aware of over the last couple of years, leaders really now have no choice but to play a very active role in managing and implementing cybersecurity strategy. And that's why we created today's session, so that we can really hopefully help you as a leader identify the main threats, to discuss how you can protect your business, and in particular, some of the mitigation strategies and measures that you can implement to increase your cybersecurity. We're really thrilled to be joined today by our moderator and our three wonderful panelists who are going to be sharing their insights and knowledge with us. I am very excited to welcome our panel, Leslie Cook, Cybersecurity Customer Lead at Datacom Systems Limited, who are an IML corporate partner, Nicole Holmes, Unified Communications and Engineers Manager at First Focus, and Andy West, Fellow of the Institute and Adjunct Professor of the UBSS Executive Delivery MBA. Along with our fabulous panel, I am also thrilled to introduce our moderator for today's discussion, Adjunct Professor Art Phillips, who is also a Fellow of the Institute. Art is the owner and director of 101 Music. He is also a two-time Emmy Award recipient, which is just incredible for sound composition. And outside of his many musical talents, he somehow makes time to teach business entrepreneurship for our good friends at Universal Business School, Sydney. So we're really delighted to have him on board leading today's discussion. I'll throw to Art in just a moment, but before I do, just some quick housekeeping. Today's session is going to run for an hour, and we will have time for questions at the end. So if you have any questions that come up in your mind throughout the session, please just pop them into the Q&A box, and we will get to as many as possible in the last 15 minutes or so of the session. The session today is also being recorded as well, so we will send around the recording in the post-session email. I will throw across to Art now to get things underway, but thank you again for joining us, and I will be back at the end of the session to help out with the Q&A. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Ashley and IML. I'm Art Phillips, the moderator for today. I work mainly in the music industry. I own my own company, 101 Music Propriety Limited, where I write and produce music for TV shows and advertising. I also do some lecturing at the Universal Business School here in Sydney, in charge of entrepreneurship. And so I'm really quite excited to have this event happening today, especially because as technology advances, we all know that it's so critical for individuals and organizations to become more aware of the various scenarios that are going to impact our own security. Risk mitigation, as Ashley said, is really what we're on about. And I just wanted to start, before I sort of introduce the other the panelists, is as Victoria University in Melbourne quotes, in 2022, Australians have already lost more than $336 million to online scams. It's just absolutely unbelievable. So today's event is really about risk mitigation and how to be aware of things and think through the changes that we all will be going through in terms of security for our individual selves and the businesses that we work for. Anyway, thank you very much. I'll now hand this over to next event guest is Nicole Holmes.
Hi, thanks, Art. Yeah, I'm excited to be on the panel today, really trying to bring my experience from both previously being the training coordinator here at First Focus, so dealing with a lot of our internal security training and things along that sort of line, and my personal interest in security, where probably at about 15 years of experience trying to mitigate risk and make sure that we're doing things in the right way and keeping things together. So excited to be here and talk about this topic.
Fantastic. Great to have you, Nicole. Leslie Cook from Wellington, New Zealand. Welcome.
Hi, everyone. Nice to be here. Thank you. Thanks, Art. Yes, so I work for Datacom Systems Limited in Wellington, New Zealand, and I'm a cybersecurity customer lead. So I work with our customers, mostly government departments, as Wellington is sort of government central here in New Zealand, and working to improve their security maturity over time. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. Welcome. And also Professor Andy West. Welcome, Andy.
Yeah, hi, Art. Thank you very much for taking on this role as moderator. Great to be here with Leslie and Nicole. Also, thanks to IML for this event, very timely. I am adjunct professor at Universal Business School, Sydney, where I teach the Managing Digital Transformation. I'm also lecturer at University of Technology, Sydney, where I teach marketing analytics. And my interest in this area and what I sort of bring to today's panel is sort of in cybersecurity, but also talking about data privacy, also how to handle, one thing is mitigating at the IT level, but also on the public relations level and mitigating risk in that way. So thank you very much.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Andy and Leslie and Nicole. We'll start off today. We have a series of questions that we've all agreed to, and that's the way that I'll actually be moderating, but there'll be some off-the-cuff things that'll happen because I think it's really, really important to just have a really good natural flow as opposed to, you know, the order of questions that we've all talked about. First of all, the first question that I'll have is actually to Nicole. And I wanted to congratulate you as a finalist, by the way, as ARN Women in ICT Awards in 2022. That's fantastic.
Thank you very much, Art. Yeah, it was really exciting to be nominated, as I believe it was the Rising Star, so young woman in IT. So very excited to be recognized and be on the list of nominees that year. Fantastic.
Yeah. Well, congrats again. So first question really is all about how do you evaluate cyber risk and develop concepts to actually protect the company that you actually work for?
I'm actually very lucky here. So First Focus, we do have an internal security department who maintain and manage a lot of our internal programs and compliance regulations. So we've got a couple of teams. There's our internal IT team who are managing the sort of day-to-day people side of things, and then our actual security team who are focused both internally and externally. So a lot of their development comes from working with our executive team, staying up to date all the time with any risks that are coming into the community or anything that may pose a potential threat to our clients, and keeping us at the same standard that we're recommending for the rest of the company and for our clients as well. So most of my role as a manager here at First Focus is actually making sure that my team are fully aware of the risks that are available, the things that may pose risk to our clients, and keeping up on what's actually a risk to us. So we actually run an internal training program. We've just gotten the 2023 release of that one today, which comes with a bunch of modules to help build awareness of potential threats. As much as I love my people, they are our biggest risk as a company. You'll probably have seen in some of the more recent security incidents that it really is people. It is accidentally clicking a thing you probably shouldn't have clicked on.
Yeah, that's right. So with the rapid advancement of technology these days and of the threat of security, which we're all facing, it's us as individuals and big corporations, small corporations, all sorts of businesses. What are some of the challenges that you feel are associated within this environment that you're looking after, and how do you deal with those particular challenges? How do you design a program to make your team aware of what to look for?
So probably our biggest one is shadow IT. So we are a very technical company, and our biggest problem is probably our people using tools that maybe they shouldn't be using. So we do have a lot of tools in place that are checking our workplace machines, making sure that we've got the right things on there, and mitigating the risk of our individual staff on their machines, so they're not putting the wrong things on there or putting some exciting new software that maybe is not as secure as we'd like it to be. So lots of tools in managing that kind of system from this level. But it is really about supply chain risk management. So if you're using those tools, we need to know if those tools have become insecure recently. So we have a lot of, I think we even have a whole dedicated Slack channel for new risks. So a lot of the companies actually in that channel checking it out to see what's coming up in the industry.
All right. So Leslie, what, from your experience, because you've actually worked for a lot of government organizations, right, as well as who you're working for now, which is Datacom, yeah? What do you identify as, how do you identify new cyber risks, and how do you pre-warn your employees what to do and what not to do? Because there's probably a lot of no-nos of what.
Yeah.
Yeah.
lots out. So yeah, I mean, similarly to Nicole, so my organization, we have sort of two arms to security. So we've got the Cyber Defence Operations Centre, where we're monitoring government departments' environments and making sure that they're not, you know, being breached, or hoping that they're not being breached, and trying to alert on that and stay on top of that, those technologies, obviously, in ever-changing environments. And that's a huge challenge, because, you know, we all know IT environments change daily, hourly, by the minute. And so staying on top of that and keeping systems current and patched and all that basic hygiene stuff is top of mind all the time. And making them aware of what's going on. So, you know, we've obviously got people who specialize in cybersecurity here, so it's sharing that information with them and running training programs for their staff, and, you know, cyber awareness training and all those good things, phishing campaigns, and yeah, just keeping it top of mind that it's everyone's responsibility. Yeah.
Yes. So I guess the importance is that you actually really have to liaise quite distinctively with your senior management, I guess, to make sure that they're well aware of what's going on. And how do you communicate that, sort of on a daily basis, a weekly, you know, is there?
Yeah, I mean, it's daily basis. It's actually, you know, top down and bottom up. So it's that whole approach where it, you know, has to be embedded in an organization and part of the culture, really. You know, from relaying the importance of security to your customers, you know, for private organizations, right through to people working on the help desk, senior board members. It's, yeah, all the time. They've all got their specific threats and risks that apply to their roles. So it's working with them to identify those risks and then put controls in place to best manage them. And that might just be a manual process or education, or it may be a monitoring tool or whatever it may be. Yeah.
Right, because it is about risk mitigation as opposed to having insurance against something. It's much better to pre-think what is the worst that can happen. Be pessimistic, I suppose, is the approach.
That's right.
Rather than face the reality of what happens later. Yeah, really interesting. So I'll come back to you in a second. Andy and I had a chat last year, I think it was, and Andy said something to me about, you know, some real no-nos that one should not do, which I never actually realized. And one of the stories that you told me, Andy, was that, you know, don't ever log on to a public Wi-Fi and actually go into a database. I mean, I wouldn't have known that, you know, but you told me that. And I often think about it. Every time I go to the airport, I think, no, I'm going to use my mobile Wi-Fi instead, because explain to everybody, I mean, I guess everybody probably understands this, but it was an interesting story, and without naming who it was or what it was, just talk about that.
Yeah, so the point I'll make in additional to the great overview that Leslie and Nicole gave is obviously vulnerabilities are the weakest link. And as Nicole pointed out, we are the weakest link. People are the weakest link. Everything could be put in place, or can have all the security, and all the top minds are working on that. But it definitely is a whole of business approach, and to understand where the weakest links are. But the example, we won't name names, but there's of the organisation, but it is one of the big three that happened in the last year and a half. And apparently it was even a senior director or a senior management sitting in an airport lounge who logged in and was able to get their credentials taken. And so all of a sudden that was open and went in, and they were able to have access. But the other one I would add to that is not only the staff, but also third parties and suppliers as well. I mean, they need to be aware of, and they're also another vulnerability. So need to be aware of what's going on there as well.
Mm. Yeah, really, really quite scary, isn't it? I mean, so Andy, what's the number one, I suppose, piece of advice you could give to individuals?
Okay, so as I said, my area is in marketing analytics, working with data, and so in understanding that it's not just an IT or the ICT department, marketing and the marketing department definitely need to be on top of this. Not only what the data is that is being captured, why you're capturing that, also for what length of time. Another one of the big three was there was a breach, and it happened to be that not the current company, but the data they'd kept on previous organizations, the customer data was there, and why they had it. Someone obviously made a decision sort of within the marketing department, but then all of a sudden they opened themselves up onto these previous customers who weren't even current customers of that organization, who had been there. 60% of the data breach was 10 years earlier. And so the point is to go through and be aware of what your data is, clean your data, and have a policy in place, and work with best risk mitigation to be able to work out what that is. Obviously, data is the new oil, and everyone wants to hang on to data. There's a classic joke in marketing: capture all the data and we'll work out what we're going to do with it later. But maybe there is this trade-off, and so organizations now need to make that be aware of that and what their obligations are. And I will say the second piece of advice is at the governance level to be aware of what the changes are. The current Privacy Act 1988 is under review. There's apparently there are going to be changes sort of late. There were in 2022, probably later on in the year. It's currently, as I understand, sitting with the Attorney General, Mark Dreyfus, at the moment. There will be more changes, so keep an eye out for that. And it looks as if we're heading more towards the European model and moving away from more the loose, laissez-faire US model that sort of we're in at the moment. So yeah, be on top of the legislation and what the requirements are as well. That'd be the second piece of advice.
No, fantastic. Because that was going to be one of my surprise questions. I have all these.
Sorry.
No, it's good. I have all these surprise questions. Throw out the sheet of questions. We don't care about that. So data security regulations currently in Australia. So Nicole, first of all, what I wanted to say is, tell me about your experience with actually studying under Dr. Craig Valley. I mean, because you're really pretty passionate about the area that you're in, and it's all because of him. Yeah. What was the real take-home advice that he gave you early on? Why it sparked in your head, this is what you want to do for a living?
Big question. Look, in university, we went through a lot of different courses. The big one about Craig was he was so passionate and exciting and really challenging on what security actually meant. And this was, 20 years ago, 15 years ago, where security wasn't anywhere near as big a problem as it is now. But Craig, while being a lecturer in WA, was being flown all over the world to really start getting people to understand that security, while not a big problem now, was going to be a huge problem in the future, and we really needed to get ahead of it. It was so interesting to learn about things like the way attackers work. You always assume, having seen hackers in the 90s, that it's six kids with a computer all typing away on the same keyboard. And it really isn't. It's about people. It's about social engineering. It's about getting a person to believe that you have the right to have the information that you're asking for, and getting somebody to give you their password. I'm guilty of having the same password for almost everything, and I've been slowly updating that over this year. It's a very big problem because passwords are difficult to remember, and password policies get more and more complicated all the time. But even something as simple as that, we've got you once, we've now got you everywhere. So getting that perspective from Craig was huge in the beginning of my career.
Yeah, well, and how things have changed and how things are changing. How about AI? I mean, how about AI? What's going on here? I mean, what new risks is AI causing for this particular sector? I know what it's doing in my industry, which is music. It could be pretty devastating, but it's actually also pretty fantastic. So speak to that in terms of cybersecurity, Nicole, and then I'll just pass that same question over to Leslie. Yeah.
Look, AI is going to change a huge amount of everything that we do, everything that we interact with. At the moment, the biggest thing it's doing is helping make a lot of these phishing scams a lot more sophisticated. The emails almost look real now. It's not as easy as looking for a typo and being signed off at the CEO, but they never send you direct emails. They're actually becoming. It's also reducing the cost. So these emails can now hit thousands, millions of people at once for insanely low cost, and it was already fairly easy to do phishing. It also creates better abilities for, say, spear phishing campaigns, which is where you're targeting a specific person in a particular company. You don't even need to go to the website and check out who works for the business anymore. You can simply say, write me an email that looks like it should go from the CEO or First Focus to the marketing team. And there it is, all written for you. So reducing the cost of these attacks increases them, and it makes it harder for humans and even our machines to figure out who's writing these emails and where they're coming from.
Unbelievable. So Leslie, yeah, AI for you.
Yeah, I totally agree with everything Nicole said. And, just around data safety and security, a lot of our clients are, government, get nervous about, tools like ChatGPT, for example, and what information is being put into these tools, because once it's in, it's not coming out, and it's publicly available or potentially publicly available. So it's and I think a lot of organizations are looking to catch up now, so they don't have policies in place, they don't understand the threat of AI. But I mean, also to an extent, technology companies will use AI, and you would expect them to use AI. Machine learning is the way to go for many technologies, many aspects. But it's just understanding that risk associated with it and putting the good rules around the use of it, I think. So it's organizations catching up and creating policy that addresses those risks. Yeah, I think that's important.
No, right. Okay. So Andy, so for you, in terms of the higher ed area and cyber risk, I'm sure the universities and schools and technology institutes are going through, right, the same as all the other big businesses. What sort of advice would you give to leaders or CEOs of schools? Same thing?
Yeah, I mean, it was an interesting, we all got together, last week, and we were discussing today coming up. And the question was put to us, is there any particular industry? And the answer is no, there's not any one particular industry. Everything is vulnerable and everything is a target. I mean, different industries, especially government with Leslie, I mean, that's sort of a rich honeypot for people to be targeting, but similarly with higher ed as well. And the interesting thing with higher education is that not only do we have our own and prospective customers, there's also very, very valuable information available and data available as far as even before patents are put into place, and very, very powerful intellectual property. So obviously that needs to be locked down, and often is. But the other area where it's a little bit looser is around student. We have a lot of information on students, which if not individually, the point is that there's so much information available on the dark web that it's often not an individual target. It's getting several databases together, and then all these tools that we're talking about, data analytics, large language models, and machine learning. The hackers are using that as well, and will be able to putting profiles together. And so even if you think, well, I've only got a little bit of information on someone, maybe that's less of a target. That information is being taken and put together, and often there's unique student information that is very rich. And it is the case that I forget what it is. We're up to about 40% of all the Australian population has either enrolled in or has moved through university. So that's a large area within universities. So and I've just got notes here. It's very big on the Auditor General. New South Wales recently put a report out, and it was like over 1,700 attacks just in the last year. Only 2 really had a big impact. But policies around, once again, it's policies and having an understanding of your data. And there were some universities that have quite strict policies around 7 years after people have graduated, but some hold records forever. And so obviously the longer you hold data, the greater the risk is. So that's something to consider in higher ed, as it is in others as well.
Yeah, exactly. So really it's parallel to almost every other sort of organization, except for the number of students, locally and overseas students that come into, the actual network is just massive, especially if they hold all that data. So this is probably a really hard question, but I'm going to ask it because I don't have to answer it. Nicole, you're the one I'm going to go for here. So, it's a silly question, but what's the number one type of cyber attack that is like or is there more than one? Or is there a list of them that you could just sort of name them? I'd like to know myself.
I guess the most common is very much phishing. It's cheap, it's easy to target. You can sort of blanket the population. If you have a list of emails, you could do a phishing attack right now. I think there are tools currently being built on ChatGPT that just allows it to write and send the email for you automatically from a list. So it's easy, it's cheap, it's really they're also effective, and it's really terrible, but it is easy to get these out. It is easy to get credentials from them, and it's becoming easier and easier to make an email that looks legitimate. Going from that, you've got your spear phishing, which is a more targeted version of a phishing attack. You're actually naming people and getting them to complete a particular thing. And then I guess your next thing would be your malware or your crypto attack. So again, this is about a human clicking on a thing that they shouldn't be clicking on and putting something into a system, which then gives an attacker a backdoor or the ability to lock out your files and hold them for ransom. So I'd say those are probably the top 3. I don't know, did I miss anything, Leslie?
No, that just about covers it. Yeah, totally agree. I think that, phishing is just rife. Yeah. And, we, like I say, we run phishing campaigns to educate our customers and ourselves. So we run them here regularly at Datacom. And it's almost gamified, it's a competition who can spot it first, and and you get used to different sorts of phishing, and it's really effective, and our customers get a lot from it. And it's just that constant awareness training, I think, is just so important. And probably the best form of defense. You can have tools galore, but at the end of the day, it just takes someone to click on something and boom. Yeah.
What sort of tools in particular? I mean, so years ago, I used to believe, and I don't think this is true anymore. I was very gullible, but people used to say to me, you're much better off working from an Apple Macintosh as you would be from a PC, because PCs are very easy to break into or cyber attack into. I don't know if that's the case anymore. Is it? Leslie?
Well, there's
Yeah.
probably some element of truth in that. It's
there?
just because it's less common, I think.
Oh, really? That's the only reason why, yeah? Right, I mean, it's not
Yeah, so,
the,
you know, obviously Microsoft is targeted hugely, but Microsoft are pretty proactive in creating tools themselves to address these risks.
yeah.
So, yeah, things like endpoint detection and response. So it detects when there's something dodgy on your laptop and raises an alert, or even fixes it itself. Yeah, yeah. So it's clever technology. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. With the increased risk of cybersecurity, certainly has an impact on customer trust. Yeah. So customer trust, that's the big thing, you know, is how can organizations and businesses make us feel more comfortable about the safety of all the data that you are going to accumulate on us? That's part of Leslie's question, and then I'll move the same to Andy if you'd like to, you know, talk about that. Customer trust.
I think you know, because obviously we need that in our business as a service provider. We need to be trusted, and I think it's just demonstrating those best practices, and you know, from, like I say, every level of the organisation, and having those, you know, as Andy was talking earlier about the governance and compliance side of things, making sure that we're aligned with security frameworks and government requirements and PCI and all those other things that are you can measure against, basically measure your compliance and your security maturity. So, and I think it's visibility, you know, cyber tends to be quite mysterious for some reason, but it's not really. It's just identifying your risk and putting controls in place to address those risks, or mitigate those risks, as it were.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. And Andy, if you want to take over from there to
so agree with all the things Leslie said. Also, the interesting one is to have those things in place, but a main part of trust is communication. And we can have that long list of terms and conditions, or even sort of a solid block of what our privacy policies are in place. But from what I've seen, a lot of the decision making now, especially when we're working online and online services, customers are making decisions whether to go with an organization or a competitor based on, you know, the way they've, either the attacks that have happened or the way that they've dealt with them. I mean, this is happening in the telecommunications industry in Australia. You know, there's people are moving away from a particular company and going to others. You know, it has impacting on their bottom line. Also in health insurance as well, people are moving away from some and towards others, you know, due to the attacks that have occurred, or, you know, that's sort of the impact on the sales that's purported to that particular impact. So it does have an impact on the bottom line, but the key in building the trust then is communicating. Consumers are making decisions on that. So to be able to let people know, not in heavy text or legalese, but finding a way to reassure, not only tell them initially when they're first having an interaction online, but to reassure them in the ongoing communication. Then I'd also say, once that trust has been impacted, it's the point I was making before is definitely within the marketing and particular public relations is how you handle that incident and how that is dealt with ongoing. And, you know, there's all sorts of things around this to be, you know, being prepared, also running through drills as if you were being attacked and what the public relations like that might look like, to be able to, you know, decrease the impact, but also to reassure and keep people informed.
Yeah, no, fantastic concept. You know, I mean, you know, we're all used to fire drills. You know, when I grew up back in Pennsylvania in the States, we used to have bomb scare drills, believe it or not. This is back in the 60s. But yeah, I mean, so drills for big organizations, probably a fantastic idea. Yeah, Nicole, you know, passwords, you know, I mean, that's one of the simple things, you know, and I'm sort of forever trying to change my password. I'm trying not to use the same password on every site. Gosh, we have so many passwords nowadays. It's unbelievable. And now with the two-factor, I could never used to pronounce this word, authentication. I don't know why I could never pronounce it, but so talk to us about passwords. There's a program that somebody told me about, and I don't have it, that will actually keep your passwords secure, and so is that something that's worthwhile discussing here for a moment?
Absolutely. Look, there are a couple of different programs. There's a big market for password securing. So you have your master password, you get in, and that's where you're storing the rest of your passwords. A lot of them have the ability to generate passwords for you, nice, big, long, secure ones that you don't actually have to remember. You just have them stored in the pass protector. If you are looking to go down that route, I highly recommend using a platform that has double authentication. Double crypto. The reason for that is I believe it was, I don't want to name names, but there was a passwords sharing manager that was compromised in the last few years. On that though, because they don't ever see your password, they don't have a record of it, it's locked down from your end, and then it's locked down from their end as well. So it gives you that ability to make sure that it is protected, even if the provider was to be compromised. So do your research, make sure you're doing the right thing, and researching the company that you're looking into, and check and see how they're handling the actual storage of your password. If it's being insecurely stored, if that password provider or storage manager is compromised, they've got your passwords.
Interesting. So Leslie, yeah, you have a comment too, I can see on that. Passwords. Don't tell us your password.
Would just agree with everything that Nicole said, really. Yes, we have password tools which we use for ourselves and for our customers.
Yeah.
And, they're excellent, but I think also education on password strength and, how you can make a password easy to remember for you, but very difficult to crack. And that's generally about the length and complexity of that. And it can be, people think it has to be a really long, complicated word, but it doesn't. It can be a sentence. You can, I like walking my dog on Tuesdays or something. And, that would be very difficult to hack. Yeah.
Actually, that's a good one. Don't use that, anybody. Please don't use that one. Or even on a Wednesday or a Thursday or a Friday.
Not mine.
It's not a good idea. Yeah, password strength. Fantastic. I mean, one of the things that we see all the time, and my daughter actually pointed this out to me years ago. She works for Facebook, and she said, Dad, don't answer those things that come up on Facebook. Like what? And she said, what's the name of your first dog? And people type it in, or what's your favorite month of the year? And people pick their birthday month. I mean, all these crazy little things. But it's just everywhere now, isn't it? It's just everywhere. Every social media network that we belong to, and we all belong to either Twitter or whatever, Facebook. It's just so invasively scary, really, isn't it? Yeah.
We share a lot of information without realizing we're doing so.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So back to customer trust and negative publicity, PR, for a company that does get hacked. How do you deal with that? First of all, Leslie, because that was only a short answer about I walk my dog on Tuesdays.
Yeah, I mean, it's tricky. It depends on the organization, of course, and the nature of your business. Whether you've lost customer data, for example, or, the actual impact of that, and how you recover. We had a cyber attack in New Zealand a year or so ago on one of our district health boards, which had a severe impact on health services for that region, delayed operations, really putting lives at risk. And it was terrible. And the recovery from that was immense, it took months and months. And, it really was about communication. And obviously that was led by one of our ministers. because they had to communicate to the general public to provide the assurance that, you know, we're doing everything we can to recover the data or protect what's left, or, you know, and as Andy said, it's the communication is the key. You just have to keep communicating and being clear and confident about your response and your ability to respond speedily and, you know, with the best possible results. It's and sometimes it's not pretty. So honesty, I suppose, is you know, key. You have to front up and be honest what's happened.
No, that's right, because, you know, it's the most important thing. And then, you know, when it comes down to businesses nowadays who are doing, you know, sort of proactive and clever marketing, that becomes a very difficult thing, doesn't it, Andy? Because, you know, I mean, if I want to send out a bulk email to all the TV editors and producers here in Australia, right, to use my library, and I create this, you know, the chances of them unsubscribing even before they even read it, it's just a marketing nightmare these days. What do you advise people that are in my shoes that want to do marketing for their own small business?
I will stick within the law, first of all. So it's a legitimate email list, and that you disclose that in the email, and also you must have the option to unsubscribe. Which luckily in, you know, MailChimp and SurveyMonkey and stuff, they do have everything in there. But I mean, the key is great taglines and great leaders. So there's the words you use in the header make a big difference on whether it's likely to be open or not. And so I must say a lot of people either are good at that level of marketing, but this is why creatives will still have a job and will stay in, and marketing companies will still have a job, because they're the ones who know how we work and are able to have that information in there. So if you have someone who is a good creative and does hit on a bit of a wordsmith and are very good at it, then put it in. But who knows? I mean, that's the other thing. AI, ChatGPT is taking over, and other generative AIs are taking over. Well, definitely in content, but as far as marketing is concerned, using the point is, you know, Nicole and Leslie have brought up on phishing. It's not only yes, it's the volume, but it's also the words that are used and that are able to get us to change our behavior, and building that trust between someone who's untrustworthy. And unfortunately, one of the downsides of AI is over time they get to know us better, and they'll be able to produce these sorts of either emails or headlines or whatever it is, or social media, as we were talking about before, social media posts that will then convince you to click on the wrong thing. And the other one I will say is just as far as mentioning PR, as well as understand what your obligations are. If it is in particular impacting on customers or some other third party, your level of disclosure. It used to be that, you know, there are so many more attacks that have been disclosed now, because there is that requirement now, depending on what the level is. So understand your obligations. And once again, I will say, know the Privacy Act and what's required later on. And within that, it's likely that there'll be a level of disclosure and who needs to disclose when, depending on what the attack is.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, I'd be really interested to see the data security regulations, you know, that are actually happening. You know, I'll have to look it up myself, and you know, I guess that's something that everybody should probably do as well.
Yes, good advice.
Yeah, exactly. I had a question that just escaped me. It's probably my age. Sorry, and it was for Nicole. But we should probably wrap this up soon, because I know the audience out there, because I think we have, I don't know, about 80 people online, if I remember correctly, or something close. Well, we want to do a Q&A, of course, for the audience questions, and which Ashley will actually do. So Ashley, can I invite you back in? Thank you. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much, everyone, for those insights. It's been such an interesting session. I've certainly learned a lot about what I need to be implementing personally, but also from an organizational perspective as well. So thank you so much. We've got a couple of questions. Did you want me to kick off, or did you have any more that you wanted to share with the panel?
No, the only last thing I was going to ask the panel, but I might do that at the very end, is because it'll give them, some time to think about it. What's the number one take home in a sentence that you would like to say to the audience in terms of, what they should or shouldn't do or whatever you would like to. So anyway, so that'll be at the end. But I think I should turn it over to you, Ashley, for the a reading of the chat box questions for the panel. And then, I guess we get the panelists to raise their hand or just answer at random, however we do it.
Perfect. Sounds great, Art. So we've had a couple of questions come through. The first one is from Jomel, and it asks, what specific tools can individuals consider using? Can individuals consider using to manage their personal cybersecurity, especially related to financial and bank accounts, example, password management tools? Did anyone in particular want to take that question? Go, Nicole, you're up.
Look, personally, for my personal passwords, I use LastPass. So I'm a fan of them. I think the way that they store passwords is great, and I think that's who I picked. They were also recommended to me by our security team. So if you have a security team, I highly recommend asking them who's good at the moment, and if the person you think is good is no longer good, make sure that you're keeping up to date on what's happening there. We use something else internally for our work passwords, and that is internal, so it's not shared to the internet. It shouldn't be able to be accessed in that way. So it depends on what you're using them for. You can store so bank account and financial details in a lot of these. They have, say, a note section or an encrypted area where you can pop in an account number or something like that.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. So I guess also things like facial recognition from your phone is great. Real advancement in personal security, I think. We're actually just about to move buildings, into a new building for our company. And that's how we will enter the building. So it will rely on our phones and relying on our facial ID to get into the building. So these advancements, I think, are fantastic. And so, encourage people to use them because they're a lot more secure than using the same password for all your systems, which many people do. Yeah.
Passphrases are definitely the future, though. So find one that can store a long password.
So do you think that facial recognition, which I believe is fantastic, will be superseded by something else in the future? Or is that going to be...
Potentially, you've got all sort of retina recognition from your eye and fingerprints and lots of different things. Yeah, so it's constantly evolving, but very powerful tools. Yeah. And the use of them will just be extended and extended further, I think. Yeah.
No, that's right. And I guess it's okay to go get our hair done because, if it's different than with the original one, it still recognizes us. Don't know how that works. But
often my computer fails to recognize me for some reason, and I can never work out why.
Thanks, Ashley.
The advantages and the disadvantages of this excellent technology, Leslie. Thank you for that. We have another question. This one's from someone who's anonymous. What is your best piece of advice for people when agreeing or consenting to websites' privacy and data protection terms and conditions? I think this is a really good one that, a lot of people don't really understand what they're actually agreeing to. Did anyone in particular want to take this question?
That'd be a good one for Andy, that one.
Andy?
I'd only say that you don't really want to read the terms and conditions and what you've actually given away. It gets to a stage, without going into specifics, it's got to the stage now, every now and then, people target TikTok and others with what you're actually agreeing with, and it is a lot.
Yeah.
And especially as from the marketer's perspective, as we're moving away from use of cookies and also analytics moving from a new Google Analytics being GA4 and what that's aiming to do in the data it's aiming to capture. Those terms and conditions no doubt will change. But I suppose the question is, do you really need that service? If you go through and read it and you're not sure and you think, I don't I don't agree with giving all this information. People have different levels. I'm a lecturer. I go into this. It's a standard conversation I have. And, people under 25, is there anything you wouldn't do? And they say, nope, what have I got to lose? I go, okay, well, that's your decision. Whereas people who are older and more risk averse, they work out where their level is. So if you do have the time to go through and read it, I suppose the question is then, is that a service you're really looking for? Often there are competitors.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Andy. Did anyone else have anything to add to that? Okay, excellent. We have another question. This is kind of a bit of a combination of a couple of the questions that have come through, but I think sort of the overall theme, and this is actually something that we hear from our members quite a bit, especially those who are, smaller businesses. What is the best way for a small business to start tackling this incredibly complex challenge that they need to be looking at and really concentrating on in terms of cybersecurity? Does anyone have any tips for sort of what are the key important steps that small businesses need to be taking in this space to really make sure they're equipping themselves for success?
I think, just in terms of their IT systems and just the basics. So making sure you have your up-to-date software, you've got all the security patches, you're constantly monitoring that and making sure that you're up to date. That's quite an easy thing to do, but the consequences of not doing that can be huge. Because you're basically opening up gaps in your armor, and yeah, so that I think is an easy thing to start with. And education, I think, as we've been talking about today, just that awareness of what the threats are and what to look for a phishing email, what to look for, for these things that may harm your company and put things at risk. Yeah,
I might just add on top of that. Just because you're a small business doesn't mean you're just as open to these attacks, because the phishing that goes out is just often random. It's not spear at all, and often small business, more casualized work, maybe a few times, maybe a bit of turnover in staff. As part of your induction, you should definitely, first of all, you should have an induction. And secondly, you should definitely have training at that level that the larger organizations are having as well. They're half an hour to an hour tops with a quiz at the end, so people really do have an understanding. And, I know more from the university's perspective and some of the government bodies that I've worked with as part of the induction to do that. But I'm sure there are also other things available. Maybe Nicole or Leslie can say that there are off-the-shelf ones that are available, but definitely have all your staff doing it because they are your weak link.
Yeah. I was going to say, Andy, a lot of there's a lot of free sort of material that you can resources online from organisations like ACSC and NIST, and there's materials there that organisations can get for free and use to train their staff. Yeah, really valuable stuff.
That's excellent. Thanks, Leslie and Andy. And I know us as the Institute, we've actually done some really great cyber training through First Focus, Nicole's company. So thank you for all of the great resources that you've provided to us. They've been very, very helpful. I think this might be the last question through from the group. Every email address has its recovery email address. Should we have one that is our base email address with no recovery contact information? Is it preferable to use end-to-end email addresses such as ProtonMail? Nicole, this is relatively specific, so I might direct this to you if you know. Panel, it's okay if you might not have an answer to this one, but Nicole, would you have any insights to share on this?
Look, the biggest thing about recovery emails and MFA and all those things, the reason that we encourage them, the reason that we talk about having them is so that you have a separate device, something that is not related to the initial form of authentication. So if you have an email address that needs a recovery password or something along those lines, I highly recommend using a different device or a different kind of email, different email service provider with a different password, different everything else. The reason for that is You want something that one form of authentication is having a password that you know. The second level of authentication is having a device that another person doesn't have access to. So even if somebody was trying to recover your emails using your base email address, if you have a SMS code that has to be sent to your phone specifically, or an MFA tool, the banks have the little MFA tags that you can get that go on your keys. That's a physical device that an attacker doesn't have access to. It's not going to completely eliminate your vulnerability there, but definitely makes it that one step harder for somebody to get to that. So if you are going to put a recovery address on there, make sure that you've got MFA enabled on your account. If you can enable MFA anywhere, any software, any account, anything you can do, make sure it's enabled.
Very, very good advice, Nicole. And as much as MFA can drive us crazy, it is very, very important. So I think that's some really good, some really good insights there. I might throw across to you to ask your final question to the panel.
Yeah, well, that's a really, really good one, because I do use that without realizing why I'm using it for banks and other things. Absolutely amazing. Yeah. I suppose the individual or the company can actually use it for their own basis too, somehow or another. I mean, how would you advise a small company to actually achieve such a device to create for their users? How does that work? That's a big question.
It's a big question. So
yeah.
I guess.
What time is it? We still got an hour?
A lot of MFA is an algorithm that you can build onto something. So you can install the algorithm there, and then that generates like a QR code that you can scan into an authenticator app. So Microsoft make this really, really easy. Google makes this really, really easy. So if you need that MFA ability for a product that you're creating or something that you're providing to your clients for a login, a lot of web developers have those kinds of plugins that
I see. Yeah.
It's coming standard as part and parcel of the things that we're building now.
Right. Okay. No, thank you very much. Yeah. Yeah, really interesting session. I have to say, everybody, I learned a lot, which is fantastic. That's why I actually did it, because I want to learn from the experts. So last thing, a takeaway for everybody, one thing in particular that you would like to share or recommend to the audience. First person, I'll go, Andy first. Thank you.
Yeah, along the same theme as I said before, if I can say two things. One is know your data and understand where that is and how secure that is, because that is where a vulnerability may be, especially third-party data such as your suppliers, government bodies, and more particularly your customers. And the second one is have a contingency in place if things go wrong. Have that part, how you're going to respond. Even small organizations, you're probably not going to be spread across national media, but you still want to retain your customers and have communication with them. If you're not prepared before, get out there. There are tools online, online free public relations type stuff, or talk to your marketing PR people and look to get that in place.
Yeah, fantastic, Andy. Thank you very much. Nicole?
If it looks even slightly dodgy, don't touch it.
Yeah.
Just don't click the link. Don't put your password in it. Just delete the email and notify your IT team. That's probably the most important thing we can do. And that's everyone's responsibility. Everyone could be targeted by an email that could lead to a vulnerability.
Yeah, that's right. Just one click.
Or it's one click away from danger.
Yeah, it's that simple. Okay, yeah. Thank you. And Leslie, what do you think? What's your number one?
I think really just reiterating what Nicole said, so about responsibility. So it is the responsibility of everyone in an organization, including customers. And, I think, the more that is entrenched in an organization, in their culture, the more secure that company will be. And yeah, a chain is, what is it? The chain is only as strong as the weakest link. So it's just, remembering that it's all levels. Yeah.
Yeah. Last big question from me to Nicole. These people who are the cyber attackers, how easy is it for the governments and the lawmakers to find them? And are they being prosecuted correctly, or are they percentages getting away with it? Just a question.
It look, at the moment, it is beyond difficult to find these people. It is, the attacks are coming from all over the world. They're coming from every corner of the globe. They are routed through internet servers that are hard to track in countries where data is everywhere, and probably not is the answer. Probably, unless they're a local attacker and they were easy to track and they were attacking from inside of Australia, which is highly unlikely, or New Zealand, it's unlikely. It's unlikely they're being caught.
Yeah, so it's not like the old-fashioned train robbery, is it?
No. And it's surprisingly easy to hide where an attack is coming from. So it is, yeah.
Well, welcome to 2023, everyone. I hope you all enjoyed the day. I certainly did. I'll tell you what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to go change the dates on my birth certificate. Okay. Well, look, thank you very much, Leslie, Nicole, Andy, and IML for actually putting this event on. And I really enjoyed doing it, and an honor to do it. Thank you for asking me, and I would love to do more. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Big thanks to everyone for attending today. Really appreciate it. Massive thank you to our panelists as well, and you too, Art. Thank you for being such a fantastic moderator. Really appreciate everyone being very generous with the knowledge that they shared today, and I think we've all learned a lot of really practical tips to take back into our workplaces and our personal lives. So thank you so much, and a big thanks again to everyone for joining today. We hope you all have a fantastic afternoon, and we hope to see you all at another IML event soon. Thank you so much.